Welcome, welcome, welcome in everyone. Welcome to Care Concierge with Care Patrol. Today we are discussing financial risk in retirement, and we're glad that you made time on this Friday to do so. It appears as if rain may be in the forecast for us today and this weekend, so let's take heart and joy in the fact that our plants will benefit and love it, and it will give us perhaps some good napping time over the weekend. So as I continue to let people in and welcome you, it's Care Patrol's educational series called Care Concierge, and today we are discussing financial risk in retirement, and we will move towards our housekeeping items in just a moment. Excuse me. So as you are probably aware, when you entered today's session, your mics were muted. If you care to add to the discussion, you can always ask me to mic you up. I'm happy to do so. And we also have a chat room in which folks are free to share ideas and ask questions, introduce themselves. We hope that you'll use it. We hope that it is a safe place in your mind. If you're not familiar with the chat room function in Zoom, if you'll move your cursor either to the top of your screen or to the bottom, you will see a box pop up that will allow you to click on it and join the chat room. And if you're reading the chat room today, you'll see what our series is, and you'll see that we are resuming again. Our next series will be beginning in August, on August the 5th. So we'll take a break from now until August the 5th. And we look forward to seeing you all then when we talk about behavioral finance. So sort of an adjunct to this discussion. It's why we do the things we do with money. But today we are discussing financial issues in retirement, or financial risk in retirement. And we're glad you've joined us. We have a process by which we show the Alabama Board of Nursing and the Alabama Board of Social Work Examiners, each of whom credential Care Patrol to provide these hours. Our process is that this is a live CEU for you, not a recorded CEU. And the way that we show that is to password protect our evaluation afterwards. And so listen for the password at about 12:45, 12:50, somewhere in there. We'll give the password and you'll be able to complete the survey. So nurses can no longer load your hours onto the ABN website. We do that for you. However, social workers, you can load your hours, and social workers and nurses and anyone else of any other discipline today will receive a certificate provided that you do the evaluation. The evaluation is a SurveyMonkey link, and I'm about to read it to you so that if you're not able to see, thank you, Adrian, for posting it in the chat room. She's so good to do that most of the time for us. How to register, Karen, is to go to, and this would be true for any classes, anytime upcoming, you would go to the website, carepatrol.com. If you're in the service area of my franchise, which is Montgomery to Tennessee, Georgia to Mississippi, then you'll see my face in the corner, and you'll click on that and scroll down the page to where it says Care Concierge, and there are registration links. And there's also recorded CEU. So if you missed one and you want to watch it there, you can go to the survey, complete the evaluation, and get a recorded CEU for that presentation. So Karen, I hope that answers your question. If you're not in my service area, you would need to look for an advisor in Birmingham, Alabama. My picture would pop up, and then you would click on that and scroll down. So some of you are not able to see the screen. Thank you, Diana, for posting that. It's so kind of you. Some of you who are not able to see our screen will want the SurveyMonkey link, and I'll read it to you now if you're ready. It is https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ these are all uppercase letters. 3, G as in go, H, C as in cat, F, M as in Mary, C as in cat. I'll read it one more time for those of you who just joined or weren't able to get quickly enough to a notepad. The Survey Monkey evaluation link today is https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/ these are all uppercase letters. 3, G as in girl, H, C as in cat, F, M as in Mary, C as in cat. That's the Survey Monkey link for you all. And it is posted in the chat room as well. Adrian Ward was kind enough to do that twice for us. Thank you, Adrian. That's so sweet of you. And now let's get started with financial risk. Oh, one last thing. If somehow you missed the Survey Monkey link, or for any reason at all, my email and all the emails of my staff are on the screen. If you can't see the screen and you need the survey link after the presentation, just email me. My email is sbarnes, and that's BARNES at carepatrol.com. So just email me anytime for any reason, y'all. I'm happy to do what I can to help you. Now, let's look at our objectives for today as we discuss financial risk in retirement. They are threefold. They are on the evaluation, and we do want you to be candid in how you assess what we do here. If we're not meeting our objectives or not meeting your needs, then I want to know that because I want us to improve. But our objectives are these. Number one, we're going to learn how inflation is calculated and by whom. I mean loosely how it's calculated. And the second objective for today is that we're going to learn about long-term care insurance, among other insurance products, and what to look for. And then number three, after we give you 45 minutes of hard news, we're going to give you 5 minutes of 10 ways to increase your retirement savings beginning now. So we always like to leave you with a little something. If we present an issue, we want to present some tools and solutions and resources for you, in addition to simply presenting a problem. So let's get started with financial risk in retirement. And the first question I have, and I'm asking you all to either ask me to mic you or answer in the chat room. Do you worry about not having enough money in retirement? Suzanne does. Does anyone else worry about not having enough money in retirement? Yes or no? Yes, because principal tells me that every day. That's funny. So I think it's a resounding yes, isn't it? I think that's all of us are going to probably answer yes. Diana's worried about Social Security, and we need to all be worried about our entitlement programs as things progress and money runs thin. We're all worried about our retirement income, retirement savings. And it's a constant fear for most people who are older. And the thing that one of the things we need to keep in mind is that we're going to live probably another 20 years beyond retirement. So we're going to be funding 20 years of life with no real new income stream. And so the Center for Disease Control, CDC, in 2013 reported that life expectancy for men and women in 2010, this was the last date that I could find data. I'm sure there's a 2020, I just didn't find it. But in 2010, men were expected to live 76.2 years and women 81. Now, just 10 years earlier, men were expected to live to be 74. So a 2.2 years gained in that 10 years, and nearly 2 gained for women in terms of years of life added in that passage of time. And then if you look at 1990, men were expected to live 71.8 years, nearly 5 years less than 20 years later. And so what do we think? In 20 years, in 2030, it's likely that men will live to be 81 and women will live probably well into their 83, 84, 85 range. And of course, this will grow with each decade because medical care has gotten better and continues to get better. And our ability to treat infection continues to get better. So we're going to continue to live long lives after retirement. And some of us can expect to live into our 90s. So let me ask y'all, looking at the screen, and if you can't see the screen, there's a picture of a Benjamin Franklin $100 bill. I'm going to ask y'all, if you'll respond in the chat room, how much will this $100 bill be worth in 20 years? Will it be worth $100? Will it be worth more than $100? Will it be worth less than $100? Less seems to carry the day thus far, which means that each of you already understand concept one today, which is inflation. It will be worth less. It's called the time value of money. Something that purchased, for $100 this year will probably be over $100 next year. And the most common method of tracking that inflation is the U.S. Consumer Price Index, or CPI. And this is calculated by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, or BLS. And they say that the CPI is, quote, a measure of the average change over time in the prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. Now, this includes a host of categories, food and energy, certainly, but there are other goods and services. And actually, the BLS goes on to define those other services as including clothing, vehicle, shelter, transportation, and medical cost. This is from 2021, this definition. In 2015, or from 2015 to 2019, inflation averaged 1.8% a year. So in other words, the cost of living in the US was 1.8% more expensive every year. So if someone learns less than a 1.8% increase in salary, they fall behind. So many of you may work in settings, in situations where you're giving a cost of living adjustment annually. This is your raise, and it's annual, and it tends to run at about 2 to 3%. And the thinking is it will offset the loss in this increased price over inflation over time. We see that prices have doubled since 1998, more than doubled. So some of you listening today were probably born around 1988. So in your lifetime, the price of everything that we buy has more than doubled. So whatever cost $100 in 1988 now costs $215. So in retirement, we see that expenditures are not allocated the same as they are in our working years. So we may spend more on clothing and transportation because we're going to an office or a setting where we have a certain set of, uniform in effect that we have to wear. And then that will give way to maybe travel expenses in our early retirement. And then begin to give way to healthcare spending, and eventually give way to healthcare spending being the bulk of our spending. The BLS, or Bureau of Labor and Statistics, calculates this as the medical care index. And one of the things that they tell us is that 7 out of 10 people who reach age 65 will eventually need some type of long-term care support or services. And 4 out of 5 of those, or excuse me, 1 out of 5 of those will need long-term care for over 5 years. Now, the cost of a nursing home nationally averages $9,000 a month. That's $108,000 a year. That's $540,000 over 5 years. And we see that 70% of us will need care, and that 20% of those of us who need care will need care for 5 years. Some of us will need $500,000 for care. Now, that's not counting Medicaid, and some of us, and many of us may, well, most of us won't qualify for Medicaid if we're working now, but nonetheless, you can see the expense and what's in front of all of us. So the consumer price index is averaged about 3.3% since 1914. The healthcare index has risen at a 5.5% clip since 1938, which means that healthcare inflation rose over 33% between 2011 and 2020. Last decade, the cost of healthcare increased by 33%, nearly double the traditional rate of the consumer price index. Fidelity Investments estimates, and of course they're an insurance and financial services firm, they estimate that a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2017, this is the article I found, 2017, needed an average $275,000 to cover medical expenses throughout retirement. But if we do some quick calculations, we see that that is now increased to $325,000 in 2022. $325,000 to cover medical expenses in retirement over and above what Medicare covers. Now, I believe that this number is skewed by persons in nursing homes and in long-term care settings. And so, I couldn't say that everyone truly will have that expense, but the belief is that you should be prepared for that expense. Now, some of you in your work lives or in your personal lives may have a 401k or other sort of pension or IRA or some sort of stock plan, mutual fund. And we know that it's been going up, hit historic highs for the last decade up until about the last 4 months. So if you're counting on this income from your stock, then let's make some adjustments. One thing is we may see another 2008 style collapse when the market declined 40% in a year. It declined for 3 years running from 2000 to 2002. So if you retired in that time, 2008, you saw your retirement nearly cut in half in a matter of days. This is the nature, in my opinion, of the stock market. It is not an aberration, it cycles. This is why people are encouraged to use a long approach with stock. But if you're having to withdraw funds, you have no recourse but to withdraw funds that are now depleted if the stock falls, if the market falls. So I looked into the conventional wisdom for distributing stocks and bonds in your portfolio, and it's encouraged to have a mix of these. And the encouraged amount is 65 stock, 35 bond, or 60 stock, 40 bond. This helps stave off inflationary pressures, but it also, with the stock, but with the bond, it also helps protect you in case the market crashes again. So this is tip number one. If you have a mutual fund, 401k, anything, look to see how you are distributed in that and work with an advisor and had this discussion about maybe changing things up with the eye towards, medical financing and other finance needed in retirement. So, and the reason is bond prices increase when interest rates go down. Okay. And they decline when interest rates go up. So now, if you're retiring this year, you are in a little bit of a pickle. Stocks are falling, but interest rates are increasing, meaning bond prices are going down as well. Your mutual funds are probably losing value right now. Hold on to them, but reapportion them. And look at some other vehicles like annuities, which can provide you a retirement cash flow, allowing you not to touch these funds and let them grow. So let me ask you, have you ever bought stock? Yes or no? And second question, do you own stock? Yes or no? So you may own stock through a company plan, but you yourself haven't bought it. But I just want to see who among us is touched by the stock market. So if you own stock or have bought stock, please let us know. I'd love to see no, yes, yes. Well, I've got 4 or 5 of you responding. Thank you so much, those of you who take the time to type something in. Only through mutual fund investments. Very good. No, that's my husband's thing. Yeah, it's not my wife's husband's thing. Just in mutual funds in my RRA. Yes. So we are touched by the stock market. And so, I do want to encourage you as we go through this talk today to give some thought, take a look back at what you have and how it's apportioned and what the fees are. So one of the things that we risk in retirement, in addition to the pressures of inflation, are overspending. So some of us, not pointing fingers, some of us have a champagne taste and a beer budget. And no matter what we save, unless we change our approach to money and money management, we're going to struggle in retirement. So how do we define overspending? Well, as you look at financial sites, which are really the folks who obviously most often write about this, the majority of them are tied to the stock market. And so they say that if you're tied to the stock market, that you want to limit your withdrawals to 4% annually. And you can see that if you were taking out 4%, that, it would be 25 or so years before you used up your amount by percent wise. Now, that's not really true because the way that it works, but in a simplistic way, you can see that. Now, a 6% withdrawal rate, which doesn't seem like a big increase, is thought to be gambling. All right. And now there's conventional wisdom that also says that we can look at 4.5% or 5%. But the point is, this is the range, 4 to 5% that we can survive retirement if we're pulling out 6% or more of our retirement funds annually. Now, I believe that you would not just look at this in your stock market, but look at any other, assets that you may have and consider those as part of that drawdown, not just the stock market. And I would look to my cash first, but that's me. And so I'm going to ask y'all here in a minute, do you have champagne taste? I'm not going to ask about your budget. Don't tell me about your beer budget. Just tell me if you have champagne taste. And I ask this only as a personal aside. No matter what the product is, if it's clothing, automobile, phone, food, whatever it is, it may be something I'm not even interested in. But if I go into a place, I invariably pick the very most expensive thing there. It always happens. And so I always have to readjust and think, wait a minute, I can't afford this. What am I thinking? I've got a beer budget. It's me you're attacking. Oh, yeah. Laugh out loud. Yes. Frugal. Oh, Monica, you're frugal. Congratulations. I need to marry you. Well, actually, my wife's frugal too. I'm well set. She protects us. I have to say. So Miller High Life, the champagne of beers. I like that. I also like the banquet beer, Coors. Financial risk, other risk in retirement would be under insurance. Now, insurance conversations tend to go a little bit like conversations about Care Patrol, which is to say that you might as well light the person on fire and watch them run away when you tell them that you help aging people find community care. And similarly, if you're an insurance agent and you're talking about life insurance, it's not exactly party talk. So for cash flow purposes, though, life insurance has some income replacement properties, and your retirement income really should be a balance of your portfolio in the stock market and bond market, but as well include your Social Security payments, a pension or any pensions you may have, and annuities. So, and let's look at annuities in a different way. Let's use Social Security as an example. If a man is drawing $2,200 a month Social Security, and his wife is drawing $1,800 per month in Social Security, then their monthly income as a couple is $4,000. But let's say that the man dies. The woman assumes his amount of $2,200, but she loses $1,800 of that monthly income. Now, for many widows, this is a burden. If you lose nearly half of your income at the death of a spouse, all of a sudden you're eating less than half of less. You understand? And so some people approach life insurance in the same way. They may insure the breadwinner, in many cases, the man, not all cases, gratefully, but may insure the breadwinner. And then lo and behold, the wife dies. And there are expenses that were covered by the wife, either through not having to put out revenue for things like maybe housekeeping or cleaning or managing the funds or whatever, in addition to any real money she may have brought in. And so we want to look at life insurance a little different way. One thing is, if you don't have life insurance, I do think that, and from everything I've read, it makes sense to include that in your portfolio, but you want to get a policy if you're a married couple or a couple that has a first to die. So the policy pays when the first one of you is deceased. Doesn't matter which, just the first. And the cost of this policy, yes, it will be more than a traditional policy, and how much more will depend on how many years of income you're looking to replace in the event of death. So, insurance can be cost prohibitive, but in many cases, and this is one, it is worth thinking about maybe moving some expenses around so that you can afford it. Now, if you're nearing retirement, you want to look for a longer range, longer duration term policy to keep costs down, but you want that term policy to at least have the ability to convert to permanent or whole. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Long-term care. The cost for a private room in a skilled nursing center, I've already said today, is nearly $9,000. Now, let's say that you are one of the 7 in 10 who go to long-term care and one of the 1 in 5 of those who are there 5 years, and your spouse remains healthy at home. You've just depleted the spouse's asset in retirement by $540,000, not to mention their monthly income. This is life altering. You can, in some cases, rely on home equity, but there is a risk in home equity just as in anything else. In order to really preserve home equity, your home has to be well maintained and well kept. If it's not, then you will lose some equity because the price of your house will go down. So home equity may be helpful, but let's also look at long-term care insurance. And I've preached this from when I first started doing talks 11 or 12 years ago about care for the aging and funding it. Long-term care insurance is a must. It's not I wish I could afford it. It's a must. Now, there are different home care or long-term care insurance policies that are available. And when you look at them, you want to look at several factors. One, you can look at standalone long-term care insurance policies. And many of you probably know the names: Genworth, John Hancock, Northwestern Mutual, MetLife. There are, used to be over 100 long-term care insurance companies. Now they're under 20. And the problem is that many of them made poor assumptions in how much money they would be outlaying. And so they didn't last. And so as I was saying earlier, or we'll say again, when you're looking at an insurance policy or company, make sure about the viability of that company. Now, when you're looking at long-term care insurance, you can look to a standalone product, or you can look at a hybrid policy. This is a rider to existing life insurance or a life insurance policy that you may take out. It is whole life or universal life, permanent life, it's sometimes called. It accrues and has cash value over time, and the benefit limit of it is a multiple. The benefit level of the long-term care carve-out is a multiple of the life insurance, which generally means the higher your life insurance policy, clearly the higher the payout, but almost all of these policies exceed the cap on limits that standalone long-term care insurance policies offer. Standalone long-term care insurance policies typically offer a 3-year or 36-month time limit, or a $130,000 cap, or a $130 or $110 or whatever it may be cap on a daily basis. But you are capped over the lifetime of that policy. Many of the hybrid policies are uncapped. Now, keep in mind that as you use that policy, you deplete the value of the life insurance. But here's the kicker. If you do not use all of that long-term care carve-out within that hybrid policy, that money goes back into the life insurance cash value, and you can use it, or your estate can use it, unlike a standing policy in which if you paid, as my father paid, over a course of about 8 years, $38,000 into John Hancock, and ended up using about $11,000 of the benefit and lost essentially $17,000 by not using the long-term care insurance. So that's part one of long-term care insurance. Do you do a standing policy or a hybrid policy? Part two is that you want to look very closely at things like the cap limit, the dollar limit that you're capped at, both on a daily basis and in the aggregate. You want to look at the month cap or year cap. How many months is this capped at? Could you have a 50-month policy instead of 36, or a 60-month policy? This would include the 5 years that 7 of 10, 1 of 5 of us are going to face, 5 years of long-term care. So we can do that, or we can do, we look at that. We also look at the definitions. And so one thing is, as you're looking at the elimination period and what the cap is, you also want to learn what the triggers are. So you want to know what the triggers are. One of the reasons that my dad did not use all of his policy was that it was a John Hancock policy, and the language within the policy said that the elimination period would be 90, date, with a TES, dates of service. That seems like a harmless phrase, doesn't it? 90 dates of service. It wasn't, because it said dates. It took us 11 and a half months to get that policy enacted. Not 90 days, 11 and a half months. And here's why. Many times, and those of you who may have worked in home health or who currently do, know that a home health week is structured such that Monday, Tuesday is almost always lost to paperwork, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are when you squeeze in your visits. So my dad would be visited on Friday by his home health nurse, he had cancer, and by his home health therapist, and by his home health bath aide. 3 visits, 1 date. Now, most policies would consider that 3 days. And some policies, like Northwestern Mutual, would consider that 3 weeks. And so be very careful how the elimination period is calculated and what the definition is of a day. The other thing to look at with long-term care insurance benefits, in addition to the elimination and cap period, both the amount and the language used, is to look at the triggers, both the definitions of activities of daily living and definitions of care. For example, if you were applying for the VA aid and attendance pension, then the ADL of eating would be satisfied if you were unable to drive to the store to buy food. That's pretty all-encompassing. I've read long-term care insurance policies, and I read these a lot for my clients as a favor, so I've read a lot of them. I've read one in which the activity of daily living for eating was that if you did not need someone to cut your food, put it on a utensil, and put the utensil in your mouth, then you did not satisfy the ADL of eating. Do you see the difference? Be careful how those ADLs are described and what is the trigger. And lastly, look at who are the entities that can give care. Many old policies dating from the 80s only list nursing homes. Many of them will include now assisted living and even in-home care. Some will not. Also, some policies say that the care delivered, paid for by the policy, must be delivered by an RN or an LPN. Well, this negates most in-home care services, therapy services, and other services. So make sure that care can be delivered by a multitude of clinicians. And an example of the VA aid and attendance, that you could be a family member, an untrained medically, and qualify as someone who is befitting of being reimbursed for care in the VA's eyes. Some long-term care insurance, not so much. So that's a little bit about long-term care insurance. I hope it resonated for some of you, and I hope you remember it, and then, of course, you'll be asked about it in the evaluation. Now, we've talked about elder abuse and fraud in the past. We did a whole series or a whole seminar on elder abuse. Some of you know my personal story, my mother's financial abuse and fraud. And so let's just say that old people might as well wear coats that have targets on their backs, because there's a whole host of people trying to defraud them. And it's not just, the kid that knocks on the door who wants to clean the roof for $50 real quick. It can be people that are so-called friends. It can be companies. It can be any number of entities. And it can be outright theft, or it can be more of a psychological type abuse. But we want to know in retirement, and if our friends in retirement, we want to encourage them to do their due diligence on any new product, service, or certainly contract that they might enter. And it's really advisable to have a second opinion. Now, this is sort of the bread and butter of Care Patrol. This is why we exist, is to give that second opinion. on whether or not this home care service or home health agency or nursing home is what it says it is. And then just be on the lookout. People that all of a sudden take an interest in you, who start discussing money with you, maybe their own money issues at first, these people are to be avoided. And I can't tell you how many of them I've come across, unfortunately, in doing what I do. And they're always the same. You know them immediately. They're younger than the person you're calling on. They have no real affiliation. No, there are no family links, no past, no legacy. They're somewhat new in the person's life, and they've made themselves invaluable. They might be washing the dishes when you walk in. Immediately, they will become defensive and aggressive and ask you to leave. It's happened to me so many times, and it's so hard to get through to that aging person. The person who buys their groceries and spends time with them and watches the wheel with them is not doing it for the right reasons. So many people are lost to that. So that's some news about risk to your retirement and maybe some things to put in place to ameliorate that risk. But let's also discuss some ways to repair your finances as you are in or near retirement. And the first of which is to downsize. So that seems fairly obvious, doesn't it? My wife and I downsized about 8 years ago. Our house that we currently are in is about half the size of the house we were in. Our kids were in high school, except for our youngest, and it seemed like a time to begin to put ourselves first and stop paying for the pool and the yard and the decks and all of that. So the benefit to us was not just that we had, smaller house and, less to maintain, smaller bills. It also came down to, like we talked about earlier, inflation and cost of energy. Now, that house was mostly glass, but my power bills, and this was 8 years ago, were ranging during the summer months between $900 to $1,200 a month. So if you're an elder person living in a fabulous glassed-in house with a $1,200 a month power bill, it's time to downsize and decrease your power bill and add the proceeds of the sale of that big fine house that you raised your family in. Add the sale of that house proceeds to your stock portfolio, to an insurance product, annuity product, whatever it may be, and will also reduce your taxes and general cost of day-to-day living. The other thing that may be good here would be an emotional reward, in that as you need to downsize and have less things, now is the time when you can give things away and see the joy on the faces of those to whom you give your grandmother's china or your grandfather's watch or your great aunt's piano, whatever it may be. Or you may decide that the family doesn't want this. It's a good time to sell, and we'll use the money to take a little trip for the weekend or something. But downsizing is essentially a must if you want to begin adjusting your ability to pay for retirement. Now, downsizing could also include relocation. You might relocate to a neighborhood in which school zone is not a price consideration in the housing. And so it may also have a lower cost of living. You may be in a new town where gas is cheaper, for example, or groceries are cheaper. So you might move from Birmingham to Florence, Alabama, and find that your dollar stretches faster, or Auburn, Alabama, or any of the beautiful retirement destinations that Alabama offers. And you, at that point, can also do something else. Treat yourself. Find a place where there are amenities and free amenities that you can take advantage of, particularly making sure that wherever you move, healthcare resources, good healthcare is available. Now, if you're able to pay off your mortgage, and you may do this by doubling payments. We've done this in the past where you make 2 payments per month and essentially you end up making 13 months payments versus 12. Or you could take out a 15-year instead of a 30. But if you can pay off your mortgage, obviously you're accruing all of that money on a monthly basis. You're increasing your cash flow. And you also are really, in a way, building your equity in your home. Now, you still have to pay for the home insurance and maintenance and all of that. But, you know, the bulk of most of our expenses, for most of us, 30% is our living arrangement. So if we can pay off that mortgage, then we're in a much better place. Now, all of us who are working, and some of us who are on this call who are retired, will at one day sign up for Social Security. You can sign up, at least at one time, I believe it's 62. Now the direction is that you must be 66 if you're among most of the boomer clan. But if you can delay that, your benefit increases each month. You delay up until age 70. Now, we're all living longer, and I think we're all living younger. You know, 50 is the new 40, I think they say. So I think it's within each of our capacities to work until 70 and draw out the highest Social Security benefit. Now, you women who are married, you may find that your spouse, many times is the case, is older. So you can draw on your spouse's benefit when he turns 62, but hold off drawing your own benefit until age 70. And so, you know, that would be the optimal thing to do for you. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but we do want to say, hey, these are ways that you can. Thank you, Gail, for your comment. Gail says you can collect at 62, but you get a reduced rate for the rest of your life, which is kind of what I was thinking. Thank you for confirming that, Gail. And you can become a super saver. And by this, I don't mean piggy bank. By this, I mean that if you're 50 or older, I'm 55, we can contribute up to $24,000 annually into an IRA, a 401k, 24,000 into a 401k. So if we did that, and we just started doing that at age 60 and did it till age 65, we would earn, and we earn 6% return, and we would probably earn better. We would add an additional $140,000 to our retirement savings. So let me say that again. If you max out your 401k for 5 years, which would be putting in $24,000 a year, which would be $120,000 total, you would gain another $140,000. You would more than double your investment. Think about it. I know that's tough to put that kind of cash back when we're trying to meet our daily need. But if we can reassess our expenses, which we'll talk about next on August 5th, when we talk about behavioral finance, if we can readjust our spending, then we can do things like boosting our 401k. And that is going to pay hugely, hugely, hugely for us in the coming years. Let me tell you now, it's about 12:50. The code word for our evaluation is MCI, and that stands for the Medical Cost Index. It's calculated by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It's all capital. It's an acronym. So it's capital M, capital C, capital I. Today's password, which you will need to open the evaluation, is capital M, capital C, capital I. And the evaluation, again, for those of you who may have gotten late, is at https://www.surveymonkey.com/lowercase r/all uppercase letters 3 G as in girl H, C is in cat, F, M is in Mary, C is in cat. That's our evaluation, and our code word is MCI. Gail said something else. I don't want to move on quite yet. Gail says it's also better tax-wise. Oh, yeah, it is to delay collecting Social Security. Social Security is not taxed in Alabama, but if you took the money early to invest, you would pay capital gains. Gail, you need to be teaching these classes. Like, ask in these evaluations who wants to teach, and you need to come on. I'm counting on you. Put your savings to work. And by this, I mean, and what I said earlier, look at your mutual funds, look at your 401k, look at anything that you have with an advisor or a fund, and look at the expense ratio. And if it exceeds 1%, start shopping around. Shop around for the lowest cost. That leaves more available for spending later. These are nuanced things. They're small things, but it is the small steps that take us on the 1,000-mile journey. And it's starting in today that gets us going. Reverse mortgages. We had David Karcher on a few weeks ago. He is a mortgage banker and has been selling reverse mortgages for as long as I've known him, 12 years or more. And he explained a lot about reverse mortgages to us. And you have to be 62 to take out a reverse mortgage, and your spouse has to be 62. So if your spouse is 58 and you're 62, you can't take out a reverse mortgage. In order to take one out, you have to go through counseling with Fannie Mae. It's typically done by phone, about a 30-minute session. And they want you to understand exactly what you're getting into. So these loans are now backed by Fannie Mae, and they are serviced, or at least in some sense, at least in terms of the front end, by Fannie Mae. So you must know what you're getting into. There is an old belief, a false belief, that you can get kicked out of your home if you do a reverse mortgage. That's not true. You cannot be kicked out of your home, but once you leave your home, then the home must be sold and or the loan paid, the reverse mortgage paid. So generally what happens is, if you take a reverse mortgage, when you leave, the bank sells the asset, takes the money, and that's that. You got to use the money in the short term. They sell your house in the long term and get the proceeds. In the end, while I have great respect for David, I am not a proponent of the reverse mortgage, because I think you could take the same amount out in cash in many cases in a line of credit or equity line, and not then lose the proceeds from the sale of the house when that day comes. And then there's an immediate annuity, and this is another insurance product, and it provides set payments for you for the rest of your life. It protects you from outliving your savings, but it's important not to put all your savings in it. And one example might be, as I mentioned earlier, the Northwestern Mutual long-term care insurance product. That one, there's also one by State Life, in which you put up the money and then you have an unlimited benefit. So you put up, let's say, $130,000, but then your benefit is uncapped, and they calculate days as weeks in your elimination period and things like that. Now, naturally, you pay more for this. It's insurance, and that's how insurance works. But if you can do this, if you can make a way to do this, I so deeply encourage you to look at long-term care insurance products for your future. I just don't see how any of us can afford health care if it continues to rise like this. Well, and here's the bad news. You can develop a frugal lifestyle. One of us commented that she is frugal, so she doesn't have a champagne taste. But for those of us who do, we've got to learn to turn off the cable and stop getting the unlimited data on our phone, and stop buying the most expensive set of headphones when any set of headphones will do, and stop eating out all the time, and look for free things to do. And this is where I will tell you that some of the free things to do will be exercise. And this to me is the number one takeaway from today is take care of your health. Yes, your finances are important in retirement, but they are directly related to the state of your health and the expenditures you must make. So now is the time to turn off the cable and go for a walk in the park, or go for a bike ride, or go for a run, or go for a swim, or do jumping jacks in your living room, whatever it may be. Now is the time for us to focus on improving our daily life and health in order to improve our future life and health. That's my weekly daily soapbox. And we can work longer. I've already said, I think, given that so many of us are so much younger now than we appear, both medically and visibly, physically, I think that many of us will find ourselves working into our 70s. We'll reduce the number of years of retirement. And I think for some of us who are workaholics, it will preserve our lives. But even a part-time job, if you became a Walmart greeter, that would help carry your day-to-day so that you could maintain the bulk of your savings for the rainy days, which, as we know, will come for 7 out of 10 of us someday. So as we think about financial risk in retirement, we realize that it really comes down to managing cash flow. And that in itself is filled with roadblocks and pitfalls. But some of the things that we talked about doing today are to take a look at our funds, our stocks, and make sure that they're diversified to weather the storm of the downturn. Now, this current downturn, it'll be hard to do, but your folks, if you have someone, I'm sure can advise you. Make sure you're not paying more than 1% for their help if you can. Have several sources of income, so don't rely on Social Security, but have some sort of annuity product or long-term care insurance or savings, 401k, something. Start now. Again, even if you're 60, you can increase your worth by almost 150,000 if you will buckle down for the next 5 years and put just 24,000 a year in a 401k. That's so exciting to me. I'm shouting, I apologize. Take care of your health and nurture your family and friends network. These are the people on whom you ought to be relying for services. But in order to do so, they need to know that they can rely on you. So check in and maintain that relationship. And then lastly, those of you who are seeing the screen may find that in managing your day-to-day finances, that the AARP Money Map is a solution for you. Just Google that, AARP Money Map. It takes you through a set of decisions in terms of finances and what you spend, and can help you begin a savings plan today that will preserve your retirement funds. That's it for today. Our CEU code word, one more time, is MCI. Those are all capitalized. It stands for Medical Cost Index. You'll receive from me tonight or first thing in the morning before I mow the grass, I'll send both this presentation as a PDF as well as a certificate. Now, social workers, you only need the certificate. Nurses will be posting your hours on the ABN in the coming week. If you have referrals for us, please go to carepatrol.com or email me or any of my staff. It's just our first initial last name at carepatrol.com. So we are S. Barnes, D. Tyler, J. Redding with 1 D, Y. Eason, and C.W. Merritt at carepatrol.com. We love your referrals, and we love being able to join you every Monday and Friday. We're going to be back next on August 5th. Go to my website, carepatrol.com, click on my face, scroll down, and register. Thank you all again so much for being with us today. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on August 5th.